All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, so I think we will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our first Missouri Birding Challenge webinar of 2026, Birdwatching, Introductions, and Benefits. My name is Austin Lambert, and I'm a naturalist with the Missouri Department of Conservation, and will be acting as your moderator for the program. Before I introduce your presenter, I just want to go over a few quick housekeeping things to hopefully make this a little bit better experience for everybody. Throughout the program, we will be utilizing the chat function. If you have questions, that's what you want to go ahead and click on. If you're using some type of computer, a laptop or a desktop, you might find the chat button kind of down the lower right-hand side. It kind of looks like a little word bubble. If you were to click on that, go ahead and type whatever question you have in there. Go ahead and hit enter, and that should get posted on there. So hopefully we can address it. If you're using some type of mobile device, you should find that similar looking bubble kind of the upper right-hand side of your screen. Same thing, go ahead and click on that, type in a chat, and send those whenever. We probably won't get to the questions to the very end of the program, but go ahead and submit your questions as you think of them so you don't forget about them. And I'll kind of look at the questions as we go along and kind of, if people have similar questions, kind of combine those two together so we're not answering questions all night long at the very end of the program. At the same time, I will be sending a follow-up email after this program. You can put your questions or respond to that email with questions if you have additional questions that you think of after the fact. But also within that follow-up email, we'll find links to more information about the Missouri Birding Challenge. And so that will take you to the Missouri Birding Challenge website with more information about the challenge itself, the different rules that go in the challenge, the different sorts of challenges that are within this broader challenge, and then information about prizes and just anything to do with the Birding Challenge. And we'll also send you links to register for future Missouri Birding Challenge webinars. And so we do have a Birding Challenge webinar coming up in March and in April as well. And so we'll encourage you to sign up for those as well. And so with that, I do want to introduce you to today's instructor and kind of turn it over to her. So today we have Sarah Kendrick, who's a migratory bird biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And again, she's going to be talking to us about bird watching and introductions and benefits. So Sarah, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Austin. I appreciate that intro, and huge thanks to everybody for attending our first webinar, kicking off, as Austin said, our 2026 Missouri Birding Challenge webinar series. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to join us to talk about this really cool topic. We like to give an intro webinar the past 2 years that we've had the challenge to get people just introduced to the sport. I think it's a sport or hobby, and talk about how it's good for you, what it does for you, and how raising awareness about birds and their conservation is important. As Austin said, MDC will host 2 more webinars in March and April prior to the challenge beginning. And so I'll share those dates and topics at the end of the presentation today. So yeah, my name's Sarah Kendrick. As Austin said, I'm a bird biologist with the Fish and Wildlife Service for the Midwest region. So that's 8 states from Missouri, east to Ohio, and northwest up to Minnesota. I apologize for clearing my throat. I'm getting over a cold. And I also serve with MDC folks and others on the Missouri Birding Challenge planning team. So if you're new to birding, or you're not sure where to start or why to do it, what the benefits are, that's what we'll cover today. The basics, how to get started, the kind of who, what, when, and why, and how it is beneficial to our health in particular. So I'm trying something new in a presentation tonight, and that is I'm going to be dropping in 5 bird trivia questions throughout our presentation. So grab a pen and paper or take notes on your phone, or you can just keep score in your head. But we're just going to have 5, but we're just going to drop them in because they're just kind of fun and interesting. And I'll show you the answers at the end. You record your own answers. It's on the honor system. You don't win anything other than bragging rights. And I have to reiterate, don't answer live in the chat. Don't unmute or write in the chat the answer, because we all want to keep track of our own answers. So then we'll just all reveal it at the end. All right. So here we go. So, webinar will cover everything you'll need to get started birding. What is birding? Who can bird? Why should you bird? How do you bird? When and where do you bird? And I'll give you a little bit more information about the Birding Challenge, which is what we're kind of ramping up to today. And then we'll have Q&A with Austin. Birding is a verb. What does that mean? What does it look like? You know, birdwatching is most often portrayed in movies or the media in a few ways. Who's seen the movie The Big Year with Owen Wilson and Steve Martin and Jack Black? So this movie is based on real events of those three birders traveling across the world to see as many birds as they can in a year. And many birders do this. It's called a big year, where you try and see as many species of bird as you can in a year. But my point here is that that is just one type of birding, just one type of birder at a huge scale. Travel can be very expensive, of course, and really just accessible to people who have the money to travel across the world and mark birds off of their list. Another type of birder we may think of is an older demographic, and that makes sense. Many birders are older. Why is that? Probably because they're retired and they have more time to do this hobby and to get outside and spend time doing whatever they want all day long. I know that's what I'd be doing if I were retired, but I am not. So an older demographic will always be birdwatching's base, and that's awesome. You know, they have a lot of experience and birding smarts to share with us, which is awesome. This picture, you can't see his face, but this picture is of Brad Jacobs, and he was a birding mentor and a great friend of mine. And he taught me a lot of what I know about birding. But the truth is that birders these days look like any person because anyone can bird. Young people, older people, different nationalities. If we have an interest in looking at birds, then we're birders. And birdwatching demographics are growing among many different audiences, and really being outdoors and watching birds and nature transcends our differences in mobility or background or where we're from, because birding is for everyone. And it's true. Here's some information I wanted to share on what birding looks like here in the US these days. A lot of people are birding. So this is an article that came out a few years ago from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it quantified that a third of American adults are bird watchers. So 96 million people in the US alone observed, fed, or photographed birds. They have some investment in birds. They like watching them in some way, shape, or form. That's more than 35% of the nation's population, 16 and over. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. But what we thought we knew about birding may not be true. So check out this age graph. This is from a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service survey from 4 years ago, back in 2022. And this talks about a demographic and economic analysis of birding. So this is birders' participation rate by age. And so what we may have thought we knew about birders, that they're generally older, is not, you know, there's a lot of older birders, but look at that spread across younger folks. That's quite even. And when we also look at race and ethnicity, it's a broad spectrum of our nation getting out to bird as well. So everybody likes birding for a reason, because it's great. Birding can also include putting up a bird feeder and watching birds from the comfort of your home or in your backyard. And by putting up a feeder in winter, you can see birds like this dark-eyed junco on the left, or this American goldfinch or purple finch you see on the right, although they are much brighter in the summer, as you see here, than they look right now at our feeders, which they look much more drab. Or if we feed birds nectar in the summer, we'll get ruby-throated hummingbirds like this little guy down in the bottom center, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, and you know that ID. But birding really is on the rise. So we figured out that anybody can do it, but it's really increasing. And how do we know this? So the activity is trackable in one way by eBird. eBird is an online database of birder sightings that has grown by leaps and bounds. It's like the go-to place online to log your bird sightings, keep track of your life list and those birding outings that you take, and to keep track of, well, the data now contributes to science consistently because it gathers so much data. So eBird began in 2002. It went global in 2010. So there's eBird. You can use eBird and submit eBird checklists from many countries, or across the globe. And so with the creation, of course, of smartphones and eBird, and everybody has a phone, we can track birders out there, whether they're just casual birders or really advanced birders. But really, this is a conservative estimate of the number of birders out there. There are still folks out there not using eBird. And so the numbers that we present here of birders out there are greater than these numbers that we present. So why is birding on the rise? especially since 2020. Well, I bet you can guess there was a global event called the COVID-19 pandemic that happened, and some of you may remember that did happen and kept us indoors and pushed many of us outdoors because it was a place we felt safe, and everyone suddenly had a lot of time on their hands, and a lot of folks started birding. So in spring and early summer 2020, tracked by eBird, new registrations for eBird yard lists were up by 900%. That's a lot of people who decided to make yard lists because they were stuck inside or they started wandering around their yard, which is great. It was a positive, one of few positives of a pandemic. So lockdown, of course, coincided with spring migration. So there were 10 to 13 million more checklists on eBird from 2019 to 2020. And eBird, even after that blip, you see this little jump right here. I know the years aren't on there, but this is 2019 to 2020. So you can see that big jump. But look how it just keeps going up and up and up. eBird checklists submitted increased by about 10% every year. And the Missouri Birding Challenge uses eBird to log what participants in the challenge see. So there are resources on the Missouri Department of Conservation's Birding Challenge website. And along with the rules, there's a PDF of how to document, in addition to a fun video that I recorded just for you that you get to sit through, riveting 20-minute video on how to use eBird. But it is helpful. It shows you how to click through and do the items that we ask you to do for the challenge online. So there's your totals there in 2025. Checklists were up to 22 million and many observations. That's just from 2025. Pretty amazing. And then these are the all-time stats on the right. eBird has logged 2.15 billion bird detections, bird records since its inception. Really amazing. Bird trivia question number 1. Get out your paper or open your phone to write down the answer. What is the one characteristic that makes a bird a bird? There is one thing that no other group of animals have. What is the one characteristic that makes a bird a bird? This is pretty quick trivia because we got to keep on trucking. All right, moving on. Why should you bird? Now we've moved to the why. We know that anyone can bird now, regardless of age or ability or mobility or gender or economic background. But why? We also know that birding has been on the rise, but why should you do it? What's in it for me if we're thinking about it selfishly? Why should I spend time doing this? Well, maybe you're feeling stressed. I feel like this is me nearly every day. I feel like this is me too. Sometimes you're a little grumpy or irritable. Maybe you're feeling sad or you're really tired, like maybe right now, or you're feeling a touch of that seasonal depression as winter trudges on, even though the weather has been unseasonably nice the last few days. Or maybe you're just feeling a little lonely or isolated. This happens to me, especially in the winter. Well, birding can alleviate a lot of these emotions that are honestly not just fun, that are not just not fun, but they can be bad for your health as well. We all know that continued high levels of stress are bad for our health. And so birding can really help our mental and physical health as well. It can decrease symptoms of depression and anxiety, can actually reduce levels of the stress hormone cortisol. And in doing so, it can improve your mood and promote relaxation. It can improve attention span and concentration by training the brain to observe details. You're on alert when you're out birding, looking around. It enhances your memory through the practice of IDing birds and recalling their songs. That memory recall is very important. You're working out your memory, of course, particularly as we age. This is especially important. It certainly helps my memory. It helps you connect with others who share similar interests if you're out birding as part of a group or with a buddy. And it helps create those social bonds and friendships that promote emotional support. It helps you build a sense of belonging and purpose, helps you build a community around yourself if you get involved in a birding group, or again, find others who like birding and will go out and learn with you. And of course, the physical act of birding helps you improve your well-being because you're moving your body, you're getting your heart pumping, and you're not, sitting on the couch. But it's a gentle, accessible activity. And even if you can't get around very well, your mobility is limited, you have a tough time walking, you can still bird and get those other great mental health benefits by sitting outside or sitting in your backyard. If you have a disability, I would really encourage you to check out the website birdability.org. This is a really incredible group that works to ensure a welcoming, inclusive, safe, and accessible birding community for everyone. They have a map online, the Birdability map, that shows areas with accessible trails and details about each trail so that if you have mobility issues, you can check out what trails look like where before you go. It's a really neat service and website that group provides. But don't just take my word for it. This is all backed up by science and numerous publications talking about bird watching can help students, your mental health, spending time in nature. This is all well quantified that spending time in nature helps your mental and physical health. Remember this report I showed you at the beginning by the Fish and Wildlife Service about birding? Well, the economic parts are in there too, because bird watching is popular and it continues to grow in popularity. That meaning it gets to be bigger and bigger business. This report mentions $14.5 billion annually, and that was 4 years ago when the numbers of birders continue to rise. So that's money spent on food, traveling to bird or lodging, transportation, optics like binoculars and maybe spotting scopes and things like that. Another report done in 2020 shows that bird watching generates about $100 billion in economic impacts. But back then, the report said 45 million people in the US watch birds. Now, these figures are quantified by, of course, adding up different purchases of things that you would do on birding trips, or maybe they're different metrics, varying figures of the amount of money they spend or the number of people out there doing it based on different definitions. But the point is clear. Birding is good for the economy, and those figures are on the rise. Birders spend a lot of money when they're out and about traveling around, which is not only good for businesses, but also can be good for birds if you're supporting natural areas, which are good habitats for birds, and if you're supporting businesses and agencies that have best practices for bird conservation. Now, here's a reason to bird that is new to me. Apparently, it's cool now. I was blown away by this article that was published about a month ago. Birding is literally in vogue. It's in vogue. It's in British Vogue, saying that bird watching is cool. Well, they're asking if bird watching is cool and saying maybe it is. But they're pointing out its healing qualities, which just goes right along with our section on benefits to our health. So these are just a few different quotes from the story, which I just thought was really interesting. So this woman got her first field guide and binoculars during COVID, and she said birds were free and safe, something to take note of in the void. She started bird watching during COVID, and she said it's pleasingly democratic. You don't need a particular body type to participate. There's no entry fee or committees to approve your membership. You don't actually need to know that much to reap the benefits. It's one of the most accessible ways to engage with nature. When you start looking, you'll realize that birds are everywhere. So true. She said bird watching isn't about fancy equipment, memorizing Latin names, or even necessarily knowing what you're looking at. It's literally just going outside and looking and listening to see what is around you. I just thought that was really neat. It's clearly reaching an audience of non-birders, you know, assuming the people who read British Vogue do not bird, but it's just really neat to see articles like this by folks who are new to the game and realize its benefits. All right, bird trivia question 2. Which bird has the longest migration of all birds? Just gonna give you a second. Think. Which bird has the longest migration of all birds? All right, we're gonna move on. So why should we care about birds? I always include a slide like this in any bird presentation because let's just get down to brass tacks. Why should we even care about bird conservation? What do they do for us, and why should we care? So as many of us, likely the folks attending this, know, everything in nature serves a role. So birds are no different in that. They provide key ecosystem services, which are, you know, the role that they play in our systems. These are ecological services that we may not even recognize are at work every moment of the day, but they are. And here are just a few of them. Birds eat 400. You have a pen and paper out already. You should write down the statistic. Birds eat 400 to 500 million tons of insects every single year. That's 400 to 500 million tons every single year. Now that's a global stat. 96% of land birds in North America eat insects. Even if they're granivorous or they eat seeds normally, they're feeding their young insects. So imagine what the world would be like for us or for agricultural crops if those insect populations were not put in check by natural predators like birds. It's wild to think about. Being outdoors would be just terrible. And we probably wouldn't be very productive in our ag systems. Scavenging birds, like vultures, remove disease from the landscape. They can eat diseased dead things or carrion, from the landscape, and they metabolize that disease, meaning the disease can enter their body, but their stomach acid is so strong, it kills it, and the disease doesn't come out the other end. So these are things like anthrax and Ebola and just wild diseases that these birds can literally metabolize because their stomach acid is wildly strong. Birds also help with pollination, seed dispersal. There's an amazing stat that I can't remember the specifics of, but blue jays disperse all of these acorns that they go and hide, and then they forget about a third of them of where they hid them. So they're planting our oaks for us all across the planet. It's an amazing system. And when one piece of that starts to falter, when birds are declining, which we know has been the case, we've lost about 30% of North American birds in the last 50 years. That means that when we remove any piece of those systems or, one part of that system starts to decline, it can cause issues everywhere. So I'll touch on our bird declines here in a few slides, but just wanted to mention why we should care. On top of that, they're also beautiful. They're one of nature's loveliest and most fascinating groups of animals. I know that I'm biased, but I think most people can agree, other than those people out there who are very afraid of birds due to whatever reason. But bird watching never gets old. A birding trip is never the same 2 times in a row. You never know what you'll find. You can go out any day of the year, winter, spring, summer, fall, and you're going to see something different and have a different experience every single time. And that's why it's so lovely for me. One of the reasons. Excuse me. We also live in a state that is diverse in habitat types. Here in Missouri, we have 9 major habitat types, from prairie to woodland, forest, wetland, caves, big rivers, bottomland forest, and more. That means the more habitats you have, the more birds you have, because different and diverse habitats mean a broader diversity of birds. We live at the confluence of 2 major rivers. The north and west of our state is predominantly glaciated plains or prairies, whereas the east and southeast are Ozark Highland forest. So it's just a very diverse state ecologically, and that means more birds. I apologize, guys. Okay. How to get started. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get into birding. I think first and foremost, you need a buddy. You don't need a buddy, but it makes it a lot more fun. Find a friend or family member who either knows something about birding to teach you, or it's also fun to find someone else who knows nothing about it, and then you can learn together. You also don't need a buddy. Solo birding is very relaxing and peaceful. I really like it myself. But if you're trying to learn your birds better or quicker, and you're just getting into it, you're new to the hobby, sometimes it's nice to have someone who can lend you a few tips and tricks. So Audubon societies are a really great resource to start birding. Same with the Missouri Birding Society. That's a statewide group. These groups are filled with people who are welcoming, they're helpful, they want you to love birds as well, and they love to see their membership grow and welcome you in. These birding groups often have field trips to really, they know the good birding spots. They have resources to help you get started, programs to learn more about it. There are Audubon societies all over the state, in Columbia, Kansas City, St. Louis, at least in the bigger urban areas, Springfield, Rolla, but they're all over, so there may be one near you. Again, the Missouri Birding Society is great. They have an email listserv where people can share information about the birds that they're seeing throughout the year or different bird topics. They have really great website descriptions of birding hotspots. They're a great group of people, again, who would welcome any new members. Secondly, you're going to need binoculars. These are a basic tool to help you see the birds closer up so that you can see the details and identify them. I'll go through a few options on the next slide, but low and kind of middle end binoculars are affordable. And sometimes places like libraries, like the St. Louis, like some libraries in St. Louis actually allow you to check out binoculars, which is a really neat service. So if you live in St. Louis, that may be an option to check out, call around to your libraries and see if that's an option. Third, you'll need a birding guide. So all birders use a field guide, whether it's a paper guide like there you see in the picture, or if it's a phone app, a Bird ID app. I'll talk about those here in a few slides. And lastly, but not least, you will need a good attitude. Birding takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time to learn your birds. It takes lots of practice. It takes patience to try and find the bird in your binoculars or find them in a bush or wait for them to hop back up to the top to see it again. It can take patience to hear birds sometimes. So a positive attitude really goes a very long way. Birding and learning your birds can be really overwhelming with lots of bird species, but I just encourage you to kind of soak up the experience and enjoy the ride and the opportunity to slow down and be outdoors and soak up nature and just give yourself a break. You don't have to learn it all at once. And being outside, dare I say, is not always just about the birds. It's about enjoying your surroundings no matter where you are in nature or your backyard. That's nature too. All right, binoculars. I can't, and I don't, promote just one type of binoculars, but here's some brands that are good, that are relatively affordable. Here at the top, you can see them there, Vortex, Nikon, and the rest of those that you see written there. The price ranges vary widely. So the cheapest ones, about 50 to 150 bucks, mid-range. My first pair that I had were in the low range, and then of course I invested and moved up to the mid-range. And so you work your way up just a little bit. I would keep in mind that the lowest range ones, the very cheap ones, I wouldn't use those long term just because they're not as high quality. Sometimes it can be hard to see the bird through them. But if that's all you can get right now, then that is better than the naked eye. As you maybe get more invested in birding or move up, just remember that it is an investment. You'll probably have a good pair of binoculars for at least 10 years if you don't break them immediately. But you can kind of move up in range as you can. The specifics of binoculars are usually, I usually tell people to get 8 by 42 or 10 by 42. So the 8 and the 10 are the magnification that it provides you, and the lens diameter is the 42. So 42 is a pretty basic one that allows a lot of nice light to get in to the binoculars to allow you to see the image better. There are a few online binocular guides that walk you through the pros and cons of some of these specific types. And Audubon, National Audubon Society, and Cornell provides those. So you just Google those and they're available for you to read. All right, birding guide apps. We're going to start with the freebies, which are the best ones in my opinion. So Merlin Bird ID is run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and they are the premier folks in the country that provide birding education. They provide paid classes online about bird ID, which is an interesting approach. It can be very helpful. And they run allaboutbirds.org, which is a very important website to know. It's like an online field guide that's free. And it provides all information about a bird's natural history, lots of pictures of it. It tells you birds that look similar to the species you're looking at in case you have it wrong on the first guess. Has lots of songs and calls you can listen to, and all these apps have the same thing. So Merlin is a great app. It's a companion app to eBird. It kind of works together. If you have both of them and you're logged into both of them, when you look up a bird on the Merlin Bird ID, it'll tell you if it's on your life list or not, according to eBird, because they sync together. So that's kind of neat. National Audubon Society also has a free Bird ID app, which is also lovely. iBird Pro is kind of a more technical app, and it costs money. They have switched to like a monthly fee or annual fee. It's about $10 a year. Sibley, David Allen Sibley has writes these or updates these very popular field guides you see on the right, and he also has an app with illustrations. That's about $20. So these are just a few of the options. There's a lot more out there, but these are probably the most popular. Bird trivia, question 3. Get out your paper. How many bird species are there in the world? This is a twofer. How many bird species are in the world? You can be within 1,000. I'll give you 1,000, give or take. And how many bird species commonly occur in Missouri? This one's tougher. I'll give you within 25. All right, how many bird species in the world and how many commonly occur in Missouri? Okay, here are my pointers on how to bird. You can see the source there from National Park Service. I thought this was a really great synopsis of a few pointers for how to do it. So, get to know the regulars. That means the regular birds in your neighborhood. Those are the easiest to start with. Put out a bird feeder, put out some seed, and you have a captive audience of birds coming back and forth that you can look at over and over and over to learn the more common feeder ones first. I think this is the best approach if you're brand new to it. Some birds in your neighborhood are year-round residents. Birds like tufted titmouse, chickadees, cardinals, red-bellied woodpeckers, downy woodpecker, hairy woodpecker. What else? Finches, purple finch, well, not purple finch, house finch, goldfinch, things like that. And they look different at different times of year. So getting a really up-close look at those birds, paying attention to behavior. How do they move? Do they eat off the ground? Do they only come to the feeder? What do they eat? Are they eating seeds or are they eating suet? What do they sound like? You'll be better able to notice when something different comes along, which is kind of the key to birding, is noticing when something is different. Oh, that's a different type of bird. It looks like this, or it's jumping different, or its behavior is different. Find a good spot. You might be able to go through, take a drive through conservation area, go walk on a trail, or you can just sit in one spot on a park bench and wait for birds to come to you. But one key is to have a place, well, it makes it extra fun, to find a place where two habitats meet, like the edge of a forest and a field, or where muddy shoreline meets the water. So that the more diverse habitats that you can be looking at once, the greater chance of seeing different birds. I think finding a spot where birds can find food and water, of course, increases your chances of seeing different, more diverse species. Time of day. If the early bird gets the worm, then the early birder needs to get up even earlier than that. So many birds sing, of course, more at dawn and dusk because the cooler air and the lower wind helps their songs carry farther. And that's the whole point, at least in the breeding season, of their songs, is to tell others to stay away. And this is my territory, at least the males is what they're saying. These songs are not only nice to hear, but they announce the presence of a bird that you haven't seen yet. So many familiar birds that we think of maybe are active during the day, but owls and others are nocturnal, of course. And so if you're not a morning person, it's okay. It's not a deal breaker. Birds are active throughout the day. They're just more active during certain times of day than others. So there's always birds to see because birds are everywhere during all times of day. Time of year. All right, birds go where the food is. For some of them, that means that they migrate. Some of them, they're insectivores and they know that they have to migrate to the tropics because that's where it's warm year-round and where there's a lot of insects. Whereas up here, we don't have a lot of insects in the winter, of course. So they're following the food and they're following that flush and vegetation back north when they come up here to breed. And so while you will always have year-round residents to look at, like some of the ones we mentioned before at a feeder, some birds in your neighborhood may only appear in the summer. Others may only be here in the winter, like dark-eyed juncos. They're only here in the winter, brown creeper. And others might only be seen during spring and fall migrations as they move north to breeding grounds or south to wintering grounds. They may breed north of us, and so we only get the opportunity to see them when they're migrating through the state. Blend in. Camouflage is not really required, but You just don't want to go out wearing brilliant white clothing if you're in the woods. You want to try and look inconspicuous. You want to avoid big jerky movements. You want to be quiet. All of these things can clearly scare birds away. Staying still or sitting in one spot, standing in one spot for a long time can help birds kind of acclimate to you being there. And you won't scare them all away. Patience. Talked about this before, but of course, some birds sing and they announce their presence continually. Some species do not care if you're right next to them, but other ones are quieter and they are kind of more jittery, and they will fly away from you the moment that you walk up. And some may blend into their environments more than others, and they are very camouflaged. So these species may only become obvious if you stay still or stay alert to look for any movement. And patience goes for yourself too, don't be too frustrated when you can't ID a bird, or if you just see one for a second, just try and memorize something about the bird, a color or a patch of color and where it was on the bird or how the bird's beak looked before it flies away. Just be patient. Take notes. I like this one. I really wish that I had kept a journal better when I first started birding. Writing a list of the birds you see, where and when you saw them, something notable about them. If you keep a journal like this, you'll be able to anticipate the movements of birds, or maybe, I saw this type of warbler, my early record for this bird in spring is this date. I wish that I had some of those details, mostly just for nostalgia and wanting to remember who I was with on certain outings and things like that. eBird can also help you take note of these details in the comment section if you want those on your public eBird lists. Practice. You don't have to be actively looking for birds to practice. Take note of the birds you see when you're walking to your car, or your walk to work or school, or while you're looking out your kitchen window at that feeder, or while you're doing other activities, or drinking your coffee on the back porch or the front porch. There's no doubt that you will see something interesting. So we want to bird responsibly. The American Birding Association has some good go-tos here that are pretty basic, but birding should be fun, and it should help build, a better future for birds and for birders and for all people. We want to respect and promote birds and their environment. We want to respect and promote the birding community and its members. And we want to respect and promote the law and the rights of others, meaning don't go tromping onto private land or trespass just to see a cool bird. We want to be mindful of our actions, and that sometimes when we break rules like that, you're not only representing yourself, but you're representing the birding community. There have been a few instances where birding opportunities or access can and have been taken away based on the actions of a few individuals. So just keep in mind that when you're out there, especially on public lands, we don't want to access private lands without permission, things like that. You're setting an example, and we're representing a whole community. So just something to keep in mind. Best foot forward and all that. Where to bird? Well, you can bird anywhere. I hope that we've established that by now. But you can bird in your backyard, in urban parks, urban areas, natural public spaces that maybe we think of driving away from home to go bird. Those count too, of course. MDC conservation areas and natural areas, DNR state parks, national forests run by the Forest Service, our Fish and Wildlife Service refuges. We are very fortunate here in Missouri to have many, many, many thousands of acres of public land to visit all across the state. But even in our urban centers, we have lots of green spaces and public parks where birds are as well. The Missouri Birding Trail provides a map of the best places to bird in the state. They have signage on the areas. So check it out online. Here's the website, or you can just use your search engine and look for Missouri Birding Trail and you'll find the site. So the colors of the dots on that map, they refer to who owns the land where the trail is or where the birding site is. So the birding trail helps you, find a new place to bird if you're traveling across the state or finding one near you. Bird trivia question 4. It's another twofer. So really, this quiz has about 7 questions instead of just 5. Which bird lays the largest egg? And then which bird lays the largest egg relative to its body size? Give you a few more seconds. Which bird lays the largest egg? Which bird lays the largest egg relative to its body size? I even have a photo. When? When should we bird? Well, anytime, but fall and spring migrations are probably the best time of year to see the greatest number of species. But when we're newbies and we're just getting started out with birding, we do not care about an overwhelming time of year when there are even more birds to identify. So honestly, if you're brand new, start tomorrow. I mean, start any day. I think winter is a great time to start learning your birds because it's a little bit less overwhelming. You go outside and there aren't like 30 birds singing at the same time, which can sometimes happen in the summer if you go out right at dawn. There's just this cacophony of bird song and it can be overwhelming. So if you're brand new, start tomorrow. Put out a feeder with some sunflower seed in it and start with the 10 or so species that you'll get at a feeder. Pretty short order. All right. So this is the sad reality, folks. This is the sobering slide. It's the birds are declining. So in 2019, this big landmark paper in the journal Science quantified that we lost about 30% of our birds in North America since 1970. So this decline can be caused by many things. For a lot of these species, many threats are at play, especially if they're migratory, because they face threats on the route south and back north again, and on the wintering grounds, sometimes beyond our borders. So habitat loss, there's just many threats. Pesticide use, because remember that 96% of land birds are insectivorous. There's a lot of different things at play here. I will just take one moment to push this website because it's a great website. When the Science paper was released that quantified this bird loss, that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's marketing folks came up with these 7 simple actions. These were also released at the same time to tell the public and bird lovers what the heck they could do in the face of these declines to help birds. These actions range from, using eBird, like we talked about, to contribute our data to track bird trends, keeping your cats inside, planting native plants, which attract native insects, which attract native birds to eat them, using fewer pesticides, drinking bird-friendly coffee. I have a whole talk on bird-friendly coffee that I will not give now, but Google and look up what drinking bird-friendly coffee is and what that means. It's really fascinating. When we start birding, hopefully we develop a deeper love for nature. Hopefully we develop a deeper love for birds, and that hopefully will inspire us to want to do something for them and to help protect them. So birds are declining. They really need our help. This website really offers cool, scalable ways. Like you can do something little, you can do something big to help birds in a number of different ways. And, oftentimes we get overwhelmed when we see stats and declines like this, and we think, what the heck could I possibly do in the face of these massive declines? Well, there are multiple ways that you can do starting tomorrow that you can contribute and help birds just in your little sphere. In our day-to-day life, there's lots of things that we can do. So I would encourage you to visit that website. It's a good one. Bird Trivia Q5. Name one way that you can help birds. There's only one right answer to this question. I'm just joking. Okay, name a way you can help birds. It's a pretty easy one, if you were paying attention to the previous slide. Okay, so now we are at the topic that we're trying to promote tonight, which is the 2nd annual Missouri Birding Challenge. The Missouri Birding Challenge this year runs from May 1st to 22nd. Based on participant feedback last year, people wished it was a little bit longer, so we added a week. So it's May 1st to 22nd. Registration opens on April 1st. So when you go to the website and look at the rules, the registration page isn't up yet. It will be open on April 1st. It will run through April 30th, the day before the challenge begins. So you have a lot of time to register. You can compete in different categories. There are 5 categories. There is a youth category, a backyard birder category, a dabbler category, a competitive category, and a new category this year is a big day, which will be held on May 9th, which is World Migratory Bird Day. So it's kind of it's an existing global birding day across the world. And so we're kind of jumping onto that and encouraging you to see as many bird species as you can in one 24-hour period on May 9th. We ask everyone participating to use eBird to track the birds that they see and hear. So you'll have to make an eBird account. You can bird from your own backyard or go see Missouri's beautiful public lands and engage in our birding challenge webinars, which I'll remind you of the remainder of those in a few days. One thing I must note that I think is pretty cool is that we reduced the registration fee to $15 a person based on feedback from last year. The registration fee does not include a t-shirt. Those are a la carte. Those are separate. So we reduce the fee in case people don't need any more darn t-shirts. But if they want a t-shirt, they can, they're more than welcome to order one. And the fee for youth category teams is still $10 a team. So we kept that cost the same. If you want to learn more about the Missouri Birding Challenge, visit this website or just search engine Missouri Birding Challenge and the website will pop up. On the website, there are full rules. There's how-to documents, how to use eBird, that video I mentioned. Lots of, there's last year's webinars that are recorded. We did other presentations on eBird for a whole talk. So if you want to learn more about eBird, those are still on the MDC website too. Okay, here are the remaining Birding Challenge webinars that continue in March and April. So on March 12th, we will hear from Austin, our facilitator extraordinaire this evening. Austin is, of course, a naturalist at Runge Nature Center, and he's going to talk about birding for and with kids, which I'm really, really excited about this topic. I've honestly never seen a birding with kids presentation, so I'm very excited. I have a 10-year-old. I need all the tips on how to keep my kiddo engaged. So I'm very excited about that. That's March 12th. And then Kristen Heath-Aker is the MDC state ornithologist. She will be presenting on Missouri birds and habitats. This one will be more bird ID, talking about which birds are what and how to remember them. That's April 16th from 6 to 7 p.m. All right, we're ready for our bird trivia answers. We're going to go through these pretty fast. What is the one characteristic that makes a bird a bird? It's feathers. Everything else, the fact they can fly, a beak, other types of animals have those things. Feathers are the only things that birds have.
Real quick, Sarah.
Yes.
I just want to remind folks that they do have questions. Feel free to throw those in the chat whenever. We're kind of getting to that point, so we don't have a whole lot at the moment. So get them in there.
Bring them on. Give me all the questions. Anything you've ever wanted to know about birds before. I probably shouldn't say that. I never know what I'm going to get. But ask questions, please. Thank you, Austin. Okay, the Arctic tern has the longest migration of any bird. They fly 22,000 miles one way. That is insane. They go from pole to pole, literally, twice a year. Okay, how many birds are there how many bird species in the world? About 11,000. How many commonly occur in the state? About 340, about 330. So I don't know how far off or close you guys were. Which bird lays the biggest egg? The ostrich. Ostrich lays the biggest egg. Which bird lays the biggest egg for its body size? That's a kiwi. That's a flightless New Zealand bird. This is the kiwi, and that is an x-ray of the egg inside of its body. Ouch. So that's pretty wild. I love showing that x-ray. I think it's absolutely fascinating. Okay, last one. What's something you can do to help birds? Well, you tell me. Go to 3billionbirds.org and see how you can get involved in bird conservation. I dare you. Okay, and why are we doing all this? Why do we go see birds? Why do we learn about them and try to protect them? Because birds are awesome. So we need birds and they need us. So let's read up on how to help them just a little. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you for your attention and for being here this evening.
All right, Sarah. So far we just have one question asking about best birding locations around the Springfield area outside of your standard nature centers. I'm assuming that's kind of a dig at Springfield Conservation Nature Center, one of my competitors down there, being up here at Jeff City at Runge. Yeah, so what do you think? What are some good spots around Springfield?
Around Springfield. Well, I live in Columbia, Missouri, so I'm pretty far from Springfield. I have birded in Springfield before. The Nature Center is a great place to start. That is a great place with great trails.
Very close to there. There's Lake Springfield, which is gets a pretty good checklist just because it gets water, has extra water, so it gets water birds and a little more open country.
Yeah.
Fellows Lake is very good. North of Springfield there a little bit.
Also, check out the Birding Trail website.
Oh,
Search
for
for
sure.
Missouri Birding Trail and zoom in on that map. That is exactly what it is for. It's to tell you the best birding places wherever you are. And there are sites all across the state, no matter where you live. So definitely check that out. Oh, and Susan has another recommendation too in the chat.
Yeah, Nathaniel Green Park. Very good. All right, so a few more questions here. How often are bird diseases passed to pets or people?
Ooh, that's
And
a
then
toughie.
also other birds and bird species.
That's a toughie. I don't have those information. I don't have that information offhand. I am not an epidemiologist. However, avian flu, avian influenza is a concern right now, but they're still doing a lot of research on how that is passed, either bird to bird and what is going on in that realm. And so I cannot speak to that topic very well given my background. So I apologize about that. Um, Austin, do you have anything to add to
Well,
that?
I mean, it has happened. It's not
Sure.
something to be super concerned about, especially
Yeah.
if we're washing our hands and things after we're filling bird feeders and doing those sorts of behaviors. Rather than picking up a dead bird that you find in your yard, using something else to pick it up and dispose of it. And then as far as bird to bird, of course, that's much more common because that's
Right.
how diseases typically work. Um, and I guess again with avian influenza, from a bird feeder perspective, that's the biggest reason we need to consistently and properly clean our bird feeder setups. And so in doing that, once every couple of weeks at most. And if you're seeing
Yeah.
sick birds, either taking down your feeders altogether or cleaning them and changing out the food much more regularly.
Great answer. Thank you.
Oh, which is another question here. What cleaner do we use to clean feeders and how often?
Yeah, so I think the common recommendation is a 9-to-1 ratio of water to bleach solution to clean your feeders to really get rid of any potential diseases that are on there and let it air dry completely before you put seed back into it and put it back out.
Yep. And I'll use bleach, and then I'll also, after that process, I'll use Dawn dish soap afterwards. And same thing, let it dry. That way there's no moisture inside the feeder to help the any bacteria or mold or anything build up in that bird seed.
Yep, just make sure you rinse it really, really, really well, no matter what cleaner you're using. You don't want to leave those residues on there.
A question about sending out slides. So this presentation has actually been recorded, and so eventually this will make its way to the Birding Challenge website. So it will be available for later viewing. Looking here. So tips for keeping feeders and feeding areas clean. And so same thing, going out there cleaning those bird feeders, throwing out the old seed. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but I'll oftentimes take a rake and I'll rake out all the seed holes and things that are below my feeder just to make it look a little bit tidier. That seemed to work pretty good for me.
Yeah, agree. Definitely do that. That's something I think that isn't mentioned very often is raking up those seed holes because you imagine, your feeders are right above it and birds are, defecating in it all day long. And so we don't want that bacteria to build up and spread around. So that's a good point. One thing I would mention about, I know they were talking about bird feeder cleaning, but I would really recommend you to add water to your birding setup outside as long as you change the water pretty regularly so it doesn't get really dirty. But that is a game changer for bird feeding, having a water or even like a heated bird bath that's not going to freeze up in the winter. That really attracts a lot more birds to our yard, especially our mockingbird. Every single time we put out fresh water, our mockingbird is the first one to visit. So yeah, it's very important. But again, you got to keep it very clean.
For sure. Now here's a really fun one for you, Sarah. What is your favorite bird that you've spotted? So you had to have seen it. It can't be a bird that's hypothetical.
It can't be a hypothetical bird, huh? I'm trying to think. Man, I have so many favorite birds. I kind of hate this question, but I'm so glad that you asked it. Scissortail flycatchers are always fun to see, and I always say that answer. You know what other bird I love is blue grosbeaks. They're so lovely, and they'll be kind of in the edges between like grazed fields or hay fields, and kind of like if the fence row is still real shrubby, and it hasn't been taken out, kind of at the field edges or between like the forest and a big open field, you'll find blue grosbeaks, and they're just so beautiful. Look up what they look like. They kind of look like a really big indigo bunting with a bigger bill and orange wing bars. They're just so beautiful. What's your favorite, Austin?
Oh shoot.
I know
Uh,
it's so hard.
well, my favorite birds, not necessarily like the coolest one I spotted, but I love a northern harrier. It's my favorite one to watch. They're very active type
Yeah,
of raptors, and I love spending time in prairie and other open habitats. And it's kind of one of those birds that I always get excited when I see in those particular places.
they are beautiful.
All right. Another question about plastics. And so there's a lot of plastic pollution going on out there in the world. And oftentimes in along ocean areas, they'll find birds that have plastic inside of their bodies and probably died because they ate too much plastic. Have we seen that in Missouri as they've been noting it in ocean states?
I don't believe so, but I also don't think that birds that die are, autopsied very often, in our backyards or out in nature. I just don't think that, if we do find a dead bird, like Austin said, you want to wear gloves and double bag it and throw it away, but we don't often look to see what its stomach contents are. So I think the issue in oceanic areas is because seabirds are, of course, on the wing most of their life unless they're nesting. So they're just flying around, they're sleeping on the wing, they're eating on the wing, and they dive down and eat fish. And so when they find these pieces of plastic or these plastic islands, I think they're attracted to the shininess of the plastic and they think it's fish, so they're eating it, or maybe they just don't have other food options in that area. But I don't personally know of birds that have died in Missouri from eating plastic, but it is very bad how much plastic we have in the landscape, how much is in our own bodies. And so that is also one of the 7 simple actions to do for birds is to reduce plastic use and to use, avoid single-use plastics. So it's an important one for sure.
All right. Recommendations for practicing your bird ID skills, such as flashcards and the like. And I
Yeah.
will add that flashcards do work very well.
Yes. Yes, they do work very well. If you have a printer at home, you can very easily make your own bird flashcards. There's a lot of bird flashcards online. One really cool quiz is what's it called? I think it's just called the eBird Song Quiz, Song and Photo Quiz. And so if you just look that up on a search engine, just put in eBird Song and Photo Quiz, and you can pick any part of the world that you're in. You can pick I'm in Springfield on February 11th. You can pick I'm in Springfield on May 15th, 1992 or something. And it'll show you the birds that will be in that part of the world or in that town or that state on that date, like in summer or in winter or wherever. And it gives you a new quiz every single time you click on it. And it's populated by people's eBird photos that they submit with their eBird checklists. And so they're photos submitted by any old birder out there, just like you and me. And you have to rate the photo 1 to 5 stars before it takes you to the next quiz photo. So it's kind of a cool way to crowdsource the quality of the photos that they've submitted, but it also gives you a brand new quiz every single time because there's just millions of photos of birds uploaded with these eBird checklists all the time. You can also do it by songs, and you can listen to sound clips that people submit as well. So it's a really neat way to practice your ID, and you can practice summer birds even when it's winter and vice versa. You can practice them from any time of year.
That's exactly what I was going to recommend as well.
It's a neat
Anytime
quiz.
I go somewhere new, on vacation or
Yeah.
wherever, it's something that I always do to kind of prepare myself before I get there.
Yeah, it's a very cool resource.
All right, and then comment about feeding birds in the snow, um, and I guess wondering those birds that are fed when it's snowing out, are they having more trouble digesting their food without grit um, available because it's covered in snow?
Hmm.
Um, and I've never really heard that. They have a certain amount that they have in them already for doing that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think certain species need grit more than others. I think
Oh,
certain
for sure.
species, like, other species that have a crop, of course, and things like that, where they need more time for the hard mast things that they're digesting. They need more time and things to break them down, like turkeys and more hardy birds that eat just harder things than these seeds. Um, but I always make it common practice that when there's snow on the ground, the birds that feed on the ground, like a lot of the juncos and a lot of cardinals that might not go to a feeder with little sticks to perch on, they always go to the ground instead to forage. And so I'm constantly going out there when it's snowing, full of anxiety, raking away the snow so that the birds can get to the seed on the ground. And when I feed birds, I put seed all over the ground. I don't just put it in the feeders. That's probably 50% of my seed I put out is just throwing it on the ground, because there's a lot of birds who just will eat more or have better access to it if it's on the ground, like juncos and things like that.
And then it looks like maybe one last question here. Oh, it has to do with that white bald eagle near Stella. So how often does that happen in eagles, but then in other birds as well?
So it happens pretty commonly. I don't have a statistic for it because I don't think that we know, across the board. Many birds are off in natural areas, and I don't know that they've done any sort of surveys for leucism in birds. So just to tell other people, leucism in birds means that they're lacking melanin. So, in certain parts of their body or their whole body. And it's not albinism because their eyes aren't pink, their capillaries aren't showing through their skin like albinism. It just means that, it's a genetic mutation where melanin isn't present in parts of their body. And so it's really fascinating. I don't have a statistic on how often it happens, but so I used to be the state ornithologist at MDC, and I used to get probably, and these are just the birds that people see and are able to photograph, but I used to get probably 10 or 15 pictures a year of different leucism in birds. One year I got a fully leucistic blue jay. It was pure white, and there were no markings on it to identify the species other than its size and its shape, which was really weird, but it's very interesting. So I'm sorry I don't have a statistic for you for how often that happens, but I have not seen it happen very often, fully in an eagle like that. But you'll see birds with just weird plumage, with little splotches or different parts. But full leucism, like in a bird's entire body, is pretty rare. It's pretty neat to see too.
And I will add, I notice it more in the most common birds, which is
Yeah.
kind of fun. I mean, so lots of blackbirds, you'll see it, which it really
Yeah.
stands out in them, especially robins, house finches, red-tailed hawks. So the birds that are more common, at least in my experience, tend to have maybe not a higher rate, but there's enough birds out there that we're seeing it more often.
Well, and those are the ones that we see more often. And it's really interesting to think of how common it is in, out in natural areas in nature. But you also wonder if those birds are more visible, so they get predated faster because they just aren't able to blend in as well. So
for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for adding that eBird quiz link in there. That's great.
All right. Well, that looks like all of our questions for now. And so, like I said at the very beginning of the presentation, if you do have additional questions, feel free to respond to the follow-up email that I'll be sending either today or not today, either tomorrow or Friday. If it's a question for Sarah, I'll make sure I relay that, and we'll find you an answer as best we can anyway. Including that link will be, or in that email will be links to the future Missouri Birding Challenge webinars and also the Missouri Birding Challenge website. So you can check that out. Again, look at all the different rules and kind of prepare yourself for hopefully a pretty awesome May going out there and checking out some birds. But thank you so much, Sarah. This was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Austin, and thanks everybody for attending. Have a good evening.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.